Well, it is still essential for your day to begin with the news and, of course, to bring you to speed what is happening in the country, majorly on the newspaper headlines. We'll be bringing you the newspaper headlines and, of course, to highlight some of the bullet points right there. But I would like to take the 10 takeaways from Tinubu's broadcast. There are 10 takeaways, 10 notable points that must be at your fingertips from the broadcast of the president. So I've been able to gather this so that to bring that to you this morning before we now get into the newspaper review. First, the president said he has called for peace, condolences and call for peace. The president expressed sorrow over the lives of people during the protests and called for an end to violence. That was also part of the presidential broadcast this morning. And of course, he secondly called for the suspension of the protests. The president urged protesters to suspend the protests in the demonstration and engage in a dialogue. He also said that organizers must see need to create room for dialogue. That's the president also appealing for dialogue and for protesters, organizers to shelve the protests and suspend it. And that's the second point. And the third is economic reform. The president defends his decision to remove the 4 subsidies and reform the foreign exchange system, stating that these actions were necessary to reverse the decade of economic mismanagement. The president also mentioned fiscal improvements. Tinubu highlighted the aggregate government revenue that has over 9.1 trillion naira in the first half of the 2024 compared to the first half of 2023. That was also part of the presidential broadcast this morning. We also saw him highlighting on the infrastructure development. He mentioned that the ongoing major infrastructure project, including the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway and the Sokoto-Badagry Highway, is also a way of also bridging the gaps for the challenges we face in the economic reforms, and of course also putting to rest the pressure on the local productions, the ways of also moving goods from other parts of the countries in areas where farmers and traders can no more have challenges in exporting some of their goods and services to the all part of the country. The president also mentioned in the oil and gas sector revival, he highlighted, and of course, that there is an increase in the oil production to 1.61 million barrels per day, removing the investors in the sectors, and of course, in a way of trying to make more barrels production in a day. That these administrations has been able to tackle these, and of course, the reason why Nigerians should keep on giving him more times and exercising patience, that all of these will get to materialize in the course of his administration. The president also mentioned the compressed natural gas initiative. The government launched a CNG initiative to power the transportation and reduce costs with plans to distribute 1 million conversion kits. Recall that the subsidy removal, on the heels of the subsidy removal, the president has said that CNG buses will be introduced and to a way of cushioning the effect of the transportation challenges that many persons are having to grapple with. And of course, you said that over 1 million conversion kits will be distributed across the country in a way of also powering the initiative, the CNG initiative. That was also part of the presidential broadcast of this morning. Youth empowerment programs. Tinubu also highlighted several initiatives for youth, including the student loan scheme, the digital and creative enterprises, the programs, and various skills development schemes. The president also highlighted that there is a need for his administration to address the gaps within the youth, and of course empowering them through the soft loan to school, that is a student loan scheme, and also for digital and creative empowerment of young people. The president has also highlighted that his administration is squarely making an attempt to address the challenges and close the gaps for young people not having access to finance, of their skills, and of course also of their academics. That the president also highlighted because of this broadcast. Housing project. The president announced plans to complete the 100,000 housing unit over the next 3 years as part of the renewed Hope City and Estate initiative. The president highlighted that. And also, of course, the most very disturbing which is the food security measures. The president revealed that the plans to boost the food production, including the removal of tariff on certain food items and the distribution of farming equipment, are also urging that there must be a need for Nigerians to work together, including the governors, including the local government, to continue to work together and partner with the federal government to drive some of these initiatives and these reforms to fruition. That's some of the 10 extracted points from the broadcast of the president. Has this really put to rest the agitations and the demands of the protesters? That's the main question we're having to grapple with. But in a way, we'll be back to bring more headlines on Sunday dailies, and of course, I'll bring you to speed what the major newspapers are saying this morning. Recall that we had carried on earlier that there is also a plan by some protesters to continue on this protest. But the president, as the president called this morning, put to rest the continuation of that demonstration. Well, we are still monitoring to see the reports coming in from the 36 states and also here at the Federal Capital Territory. We'll always bring you to speed to what's happening in the country. But let's get to the world of sport. A lot of events is happening in the world of sports, and Anthony Mamodu, our sport correspondents, have a package for you this morning. Let's take a listen.
Hello sports fans, welcome to Sports News Update. Let's begin from the Olympics, where Friday's quarterfinal between France and Argentina in the men's Olympic football tournament was followed by a huge melee on the field. Host France, managed by Thierry Henry, won the game 1-0 to set up a clash with Egypt in the last four, thanks to an early goal by Crystal Palace's Jean-Philippe Matete. The game was the latest chapter in the fierce rivalry between these two great footballing nations. Tension between the two has been high since Argentina beat Les Blues in the penalty shootout to win the epic FIFA World Cup final in December 2022. Some Argentinian fans celebrated that victory with a derogatory chant about France that has been widely condemned as racist, homophobic and transphobic, but that song was sung again, including a group of players, after Argentina won the summer's Copa America in the USA. Before Friday's match, Argentina's national anthem was widely booed by the crowd after the Nouveau Stade de Bordeaux. Georgian judo star Guram Tushishvili was disqualified from the men's 100-kilogram judo competition after he bizarrely appeared to kick out at French favorite Teddy Riner during their quarterfinal clash. Riner, a gold medalist at the 2012 Games and the 2016 Games, has since advanced to the final after beating Tajikistan's Temur Rakimov in the resulting semi-final, but his meeting with Tushishvili, 29, ended in unsavory scenes, with the Georgian appearing to clash with the French star after Riner had landed a winning move on his opponent. Tushishvili reacted angrily after Riner's hip bone, pushing his leg upwards into the Frenchman's crotch before getting to his feet and appearing to push the 35-year-old's head into the canvas. Riner, incensed by the Georgian lack of sportsmanship, held on to the Georgian, who subsequently pushed him back onto the canvas with his hip. A Paris Olympics official has had his accreditation revoked after appearing to make a controversial hand gesture that can be interpreted as a white supremacy symbol. The unnamed man was caught on camera during the women's street skate finals last Sunday and had been wearing Olympic Broadcasting Services kit. According to a journalist who informed organizers of the incident, the man, who has been identified as a subcontractor, was stood behind athletes at the La Condor Urban Park and twice made an OK gesture low to his side in the background of TV shots. His forefinger and thumb linked to form the symbol, which can be used to show approval and is a widely used emoji. However, it's also alleged that its use among certain far-right groups is on the rise. The man's motives are not known. It is said that the man tried to maneuver himself into a position that would allow him to be spotted in the live footage, also displayed on the venue's large screens. And talking tennis at the Olympics, Novak Djokovic was booed by the crowd as he fumed at the umpire and his own coaching team at the Roland Garros during his men's singles Olympic semi-final victory over Italian Lorenzo Musetti on Friday evening. The Serbian has split opinions amongst tennis fans throughout his stellar career and fumed when he was hit with a second-time violation during the Olympic clash. Djokovic lost his first serve as a result of the violation and stomped towards the umpire to complain after losing the subsequent follow-up point. An X-rated exchange followed and the 37-year-old was then struck with a code violation for his language before ending the exchange saying, "You are trying to do your job." An X-rated exchange followed and the 37-year-old was then struck with a code violation for his language before ending the exchange. He then walked back to the baseline grinning with annoyance, evidently due to the way his violation had been publicly issued by the match umpire. And that's how we call it a wrap on the Sports News Update. I am Anthony Momodu.
A very big thank you to Anthony Mamodu for bringing to us some of the highlights in the world of sports. And of course, as I said earlier, many issues in the country, very burning. But most approachable is the fact that the president has come out today to address the nations on the hunger protests. As some persons may said, the president have not answered the questions and the concern of the protesters. But in a way, the president has come out to realize some of the achievements of his administration, underscoring the fact that some of the policies he made was out of concern to put to rest the challenges, the future challenges of our economy. Most very stressed one was the issues of fuel subsidy removal. The president had to again reiterated his commitment to the removal of subsidy, that it was needful, it was necessary for our economy to survive. But we'll bring you, and of course, I'll bring all of these in consideration of the fact that some of the papers may be having some of these highlights on it. But for now, let's go on a break, and once we return from the break, we'll bring you the newspaper today. Stay with us.
Are you ready to be entertained like never before? Get ready to dive into the latest and greatest entertainment news in lifestyle, music, movies, birthday celebration, and so much more, all on Entertainment Circle on Global Television. From the hottest red carpet event to exclusive interviews with your favorite stars, we've got you covered. Stay up to date with the latest trends and news from the entertainment world, all in one place. Tune in every Saturday by 1 p.m. with Chong Annabelle Joseph on Global Television.
I want to enjoy you to join DSTV channels 365 Global TV for smooth, seamless programming, news, information, entertainment. Stay locked down. Enjoy the programming.
Everyone, for your news, entertainment, movies, and also not, tune into DSTV channel 365. You're not going to regret it. Global TV, there you go.
Everyone, for your news and your entertainment, tune into Global TV channel 365 on DSTV. You won't regret it.
Everyone, for your news and entertainment, you can tune into channel 365 on DSTV. You won't regret it.
For your news and entertainment, you can tune in to channel 365 Global TV on DSTV. We got you. You won't regret.
Do well to tune in to Global Television on channel 365 on DSTV.
Tune in to Global Television on channel 365. Stay tuned on DSTV.
Global Morning is your ultimate destination for engaging political and economic matters. I am Uyi Agmofwebe.
And don't forget to include social discussions. Tune in every weekdays from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. I am Queen Agaba.
For insightful breakfast ideas, business summaries, sports highlights, international and local news perspective, I am Anthony Momodu.
Don't miss the in-depth analysis of current and political issues by the Global Morning team and experts. I am Jumai Manson.
Catch Global Morning here on Global Television. Getting on the action. I am Edikan Michael.
We are
the Global Morning team.
Frankly speaking, it is now time for Nigerians to see that Global TV has come and has come to stay.
Just 1 year. This is it.
Many thanks everyone for still stay with us here on Global Morning. It's a Sunday morning and we have the fact that we just have to get straight to what the newspaper are really having on their front pages this morning so that you can ask your vendor to give you more for more details on it. We'll get to start with Leadership Sunday. Leadership Sunday this morning has other big stories. But of course, let me first say that I'll be joined by a senior energy analyst and consultant, Dr. Wisdom Enang, who is connected with us virtually from Lagos to also look at these issues and analyze most very pressing issues in the country. And of course, also underscoring the fact that what the president is insisting for the protesters to suspend the protests. How many Nigerians will respond to these, the reactions of Nigerians, and of course looking at some of the things he has highlighted, some of the achievements of his administration, some of the reforms he's taken on. Would these really put to rest the agitations by the protesters? We're looking at all of this and of course what the papers are saying this morning. Good morning, Dr. Wisdom, and thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much, my brother.
Thanks so much. Let me get to the front page of Leadership Sunday. The big story on Leadership Sunday this morning says, we won't allow selfish politicians destroy Nigeria, Tinubu warns. Writers to that stories, begs demonstrators to suspend agitation for dialogue, laments death, destruction in Borno, Jigawa, Kaduna, Kano, others, vows to deal with those threatening a section of the country, insist economic reforms yielding desired result. And then we have also fuel crisis. Marketers cried out over persistent supply glitches. Doctor, let me just get your take on the very big story right there on the Leadership Sunday. We won't allow selfish politicians destroy Nigeria, Tinubu warns. And of course, he has lamented over the dates in Borno, Jigawa, Kaduna, and others. He also begs the demonstrators to suspend agitation for dialogue. What do you make out of this statement by the president, underscoring the fact that, yes, it is the right of Nigerians to protest, and they had earlier, the protesters, the organizers of the protesters had earlier sent a message that this will be carried out for 10 days, and this is already day 4. And the president, to some Nigerians, has not addressed the issues, the demands, away from the fact that he has realized what his administrations have achieved, and now saying that they shouldn't allow selfish politicians, to destroy the country. How do you balance this, Doctor?
Right. I think the first thing that Mr. President must know is that the real cause of the actions are really, hunger and the really, I think, very tense economic atmosphere. Then the politicians, in quotes, are just the catalyst. They don't start or end these sort of protest reactions. They only speed up the reactions. And so Mr. President must know that it is important for us to address the critical elements that are leading to this sort of protest. And it's not only telling people what you've done or what you plan to do, it's also telling people how you're going to do it and when you're going to do it. That's important because, people know that there needs to be a timeline. I keep asking people, like, what's your take? Be patient and give it time. And then someone said to me, how do I not live long enough to be able to benefit from the Nigeria of tomorrow that you're talking about? I need the reforms now. I need to know how long I'm going to wait. I think these are critical aspects of the president's answer. But you cannot go treating the symptoms. You have to treat the underlying conditions. You cannot go chasing the catalyst that only speeds up a reaction. You have to go and find out what starts and what ends the reaction. And I think that's what Mr. President ought to be doing, not even away from the speech. He ought to be doing from now on to instill more confidence in the minds of Nigerians.
Very excellent one there, Doctor. They are also concerned that it is more disturbing what is happening in the north, where the governor, Obasani, has reacted and blames the north backwardness on the past leaders. It's right there on the paper, Leadership Sunday. How do you make out of the protests by the level of destructions, the looting carried out in the north? Does it look like they took the protest to another level? Because even when you look at the records of the dead, so the deaths coming in, the records of the dead, we've seen that this is happening in Borno, this is happening in Jigawa, this is happening in Kaduna, this is happening in Kano, majorly the north. How do you make out of this, their responses, how they took these protests?
Right. Thank you very much. I think the North was a little bit more extreme than we would have hoped. And with that means that, things went out of hand, basically. And I think people need to understand that you have to, first and foremost, the Constitution allows you to exercise your rights, and your right to protest. But that right should not infringe on the rights of other people. And that right obviously should not be violence. So I think it has to also border on education and not just surface education. I mean, the first is education that life is precious. And that's, I think, the most fundamental education that everyone should have. The second is that violence has really not been able to achieve much. In real sense, if you look at the violence aspect of the NSAS protest, that took some companies back a few years back in their progress, because I knew companies that lost their properties, and then some of them couldn't recover all of it through insurance, and they had to bear that cost and price it in as part of their businesses. And once they price it in, you and I, who are the consumers, are going to face this. I think violence of that nature should never be the option. And I think education plays a very critical role, because what you tend to see is, if people know how much life is worth, they have a lot to lose, and they feel they don't want to go that extreme, it would really inform how radical they're going to go in the event of a protest. So I do believe that education is a critical thing to be addressed there.
Very brilliant one there, Doctor. We are still looking at Leadership Sunday and what the papers are likely having. Federal government plans issues of building a manufacturing the hub in 6th Zone. It's also there on the Leadership Sunday this morning. Doctor, let me get these reactions on the fuel crisis. The marketers cried out over persistent supply glitches. It looks as this is persistent right now. We've seen queues are not in any way quenching from the many filling stations. What is really the problem? We've seen that NNPC probably may blame issues of logistics and depot. I mean, you are an expert in that field. Give us a better understanding why we are finding these persistent queues in the filling stations.
All right, so there are structural issues that has to do with the actual being able to supply on a regional basis because of the fear of protest. Because I tell you what, different companies have different risk operating thresholds. Beyond that threshold, they don't want to operate anymore. Some companies will have the sort of green, amber, and red sort of indicators, and a protest will be for some companies may be red, because it could go very violent, and at the same time a protest could be an amber. What that means is that some companies will choose, look, I don't want to have that conversation where my insurance company isn't covering my it's not covering my damages, and I don't want to have that conversation, so I'm not going to supply fuel. So some companies had to shut off, and that's the reality. But also before then, we had a reduction in the actual imported amount of products. For some reasons, I'm not sure why, the NNPC couldn't get in enough products, because I did go, I think about 2 days before the protest, I started seeing queues, and I asked why. And I actually thought it was because of the fear of the protest that led to that sort of reaction from the people. But I was told no, that they've gone to lift fuel and they don't have enough, and so the NNPC have asked them to the guy that is lifting from the NNPC to supply them. I've asked them to have some patience, that will be fixed pretty soon. So I think it's a combination of a logistical issue, which is a more structural issue, and an importation issue for reasons best known to the sole importers of fuel in Nigeria.
All right, Doctor, let's now get to Sunday Independent. Sunday Independent headlines this morning. Big story right there. Again, Tinubu appeals for calm. Writers to that story begs aggrieved protesters to end action, defend subsidy removal and other economic reforms. Says productivity has reached new levels in the non-oil sector. You can find this story on page 6 of the Sunday Independent. Doctor, let me quickly get your take on these issues of fuel subsidy removal. Tinubu is coming out again to defend that policy, but we are seeing the outcry by Nigerians that this policy is quite very disturbing to them. It has affected, all the chains, the value chains in distribution, the value chains, every engagement that you can actually put up there. It looks like this is a policy that to many Nigerians is evil to some extent. How do you make out of the defensive action by the president this morning on his broadcast, underscoring the fact that the hardship in the country can also be shared to some percentage to the fact that the subsidy removal is the reason behind?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very simple thing that people need to understand. And the truth is, the fuel subsidy removal, no one is saying that it was evil. Actually, on almost all the presidential candidates, everyone advocated for the removal of fuel subsidy. As I said before, the problem is removing fuel subsidy, floating the naira, and being met with a very huge surge in inflation. That is the problem. It's a tripartite problem that has come on the president. Now, here's the thing. What are things, if you do a what-if analysis or investigate what went wrong, you remove fuel subsidy, but you are working the plans for the mitigation of the plight of the average Nigerian on a retrospective basis. That's the problem. You're working it from the condition, and you're trying to work it backwards. That's the problem. So why did we not have a plan to say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how long it's going to take, and this is the right time to remove the fuel subsidy? That's the first problem. The second problem, as I said, if you read the Renewed Hope agenda, what you're going to find is that it was said right there categorically that if you float the naira and remove fuel subsidy, both of which are burning our budgets, that you would have naira operate at about the fair value of 500 to 600. That is no way close to what naira is operating at the moment. And what that means is that the government is either having to hope that things are going to get better with the policies, or they are actually out of control. Because what you simulated, so when you make an economic simulation, there are boundary conditions. The boundary conditions should tell you the worst and the best scenario. And so the question I'm asking as an educated Nigerian is, what is the worst case scenario? How bad will it get before it gets better? Because every economic manager should have simulated the effect of your monetary policies on the physical aspect of the economy. And the physical aspect is exactly what you and I are crying about. So my question is, the economy manager, did you do a simulation from your end-to-end simulation of your boundary conditions? What was the worst that Nigerians are going to face? If I know the worst that is going to happen, then I can prepare for it. But the problem is, you don't want to be thinking that your leaders are having a deterministic outlook to the economy, which means they have full control. And then you find out that they're having a very, very rough type of stochastic control. Absolutely no control. And things are just going haywire. And all they have to do is to pick moments and tell you, this is what we've done, this is what we've done, but not answering the right question of how are you going to salvage the situation, and what is even salvage going to look like? Because it's not enough for you to say, I'm going to salvage the situation. Okay, what does a repaired economy, what does a salvaged economy look like? Is naira going to go to 600? Is the fuel going to get to about 400 when you're done? These are critical answers that we need at this point to give confidence, not just telling us that, we know why, we know what you've done, but we don't know how you've done it, how you're going to do it, and we don't also know, when you're going to do it. That's the important things that we need. The two questions, how and when.
Very big concern right there. We're still on the Sunday Independent newspaper. Let's get to the fact that Stampede as security operative shoot at protesters in Abuja. That is on page 3. But right as to that particular headline says, police caution Amnesty International over report. Pandit calls for end of protest. PDP slams Tinubu over his silence. I have delivered your message to Tinubu, Speaker Abbas tells the youth. Doctor, let's look at these issues of security operative shooting at protesters. Most very disturbing scene. We've seen instances where the security agencies are out to defend some of their reports in terms of the statistics of the death recorded in the course of these 3 days protests earlier. How do you look at, how can you assess the confrontation, the mechanism deployed by the security agencies? In some instances, we've seen them using tear gas. We've seen also instances where the protesters were very harmless, but they have to confront very tough scenes with the security agencies. How can you assess the security agencies' response to some of these issues for the 3 days protest?
I think, for the most part, in most videos that I've watched, the security operatives have coordinated themselves responsibly. But, in most cases too, in some cases rather, I've also seen where they have used undefendable level of force. Because I mean, as I said, there's always a logic. As I always say, there's always a logic to any actions that people want to take. And even the Constitution allows for you to use a certain level of force, provided you can defend it in the discharge of your duty. And that's down to the judgment of the security operatives. What sort of challenges were they facing out there? What was the risk rating that they were encountering? And also, what was the intelligence report that they were privy to? These are all aspects that would inform the use of force. But the use of lethal force for people that are completely harmless or they don't have the means to cause that much harm, I think it's inexcusable. And it draws, I think it should draw the attention of the police academy on the sort of trainings that they need to prepare for their officers on crowd control and protest management. I think those are two important areas that we need to be having a discussion at the academy. But other than that, I think the police have improved, because the brutality in other protests is no way. The brutality in this protest is not even compared to previous protests. So I think there is a huge level of improvement, but there's also more room for improvement in terms of crowd management and protest management.
All right, let's get the last story on the Sunday Independent. Last story right there. Only INEC without Yakubu can handle local government election, says an analyst on page 2 of the Sunday Daily. Writers to that headline says conflicts will be better managed by INEC, and frown at governors over bearing the influence on local government polls. Doctor, we've seen the concern about the local government elections, and of course many states are warming up to conduct the local government polls. They're also concerned about governors not allowing some of these instances to be transparent. We've seen where we've seen in other states like Delta State, where the People's Democratic Party, the ruling party in that state, clinched all the offices in the local government offices in Delta. And also the councillorship position. This is also the concern about the autonomy that was granted by the Supreme Court, full autonomy, the financial autonomy. Is it that the local government, we cannot have a proper election conducted by the state independent electoral body, now that there's a need for many people to be calling on INEC to be conducting local government election? We even went the fact that we've seen that the INEC also are having their challenges and their weaknesses as well.
Thank you very much. The thing is, the issue there is not, I would like to correct, is not about the People's Democratic Party or any party fielding all the positions. I think that is not enough to say there was foul play. But, the aspect of there is credence in the aspect that, okay, there's a potential for a conflict of interest if the state independent electoral commission should discharge the duty. But the truth is this, right? I believe in something, regardless of who conducts an election. The risk of compromise is equally as high, because also there's a theory that, okay, what if it's INEC and the INEC officials have been compromised to a large degree? What does that mean for the success of the elections itself? So, right, the truth is this. You got to find out that if there's any issue, I think let's talk based on an issue. How are we going to address it? That's what I always say to people. Let it not be based on a blanket statement. Let it be issue based. Okay, these are the faults. This is where exactly things are getting wrong, and this is exactly what needs to be addressed. Now, I'm not against the issue of INEC conducting elections for the local government, but I think it's a very huge burden on INEC. I think we might have to synchronize the election cycle so that it is conducted perhaps at the time where the governorship is also conducted. That way it is easier. The incremental costs on INEC is not that much, because at the moment we have a lot of off-cycle election periods. Delta has their own, Akwa Ibom has their own, Kano has their own. If you want INEC to be doing that, it's going to be very expensive to handle it at their own election cycle. So I think if they want INEC to do it, funding is a very, very critical issue. How are we going to fund it? Now, one of the areas, the ways I'm going to recommend is to, take the funding from part of the local government allocations and contribute it towards the if it's INEC or whoever you're going to prepare for that responsibility, you produce funding to support them from there. Maybe a certain percentage of the local government election, allocations is something I'll recommend. Other than that, I would say let's try to solve the problem by standardizing the state independent electoral commission so that they perform that duty. The issue should not be based on a party. The issue should not be based on, a blanket statement or emotional statement. It should be based on what exactly is going wrong and what needs to be fixed. And then we could standardize it and make it work, at least in the interim.
All right, very brilliant and excellent one there. Let's now get to the Sunday Tribune. Sunday Tribune newspaper has it at a big story on the Sunday Tribune. Suspend protests, create room for dialogue. Tinubu pleads with Nigerian youth. The writer to the story is Nigerian risks losing over 350 billion naira daily, the experts claim. Citizens count gains, losses, protesters to hold church service in Lagos, Jos. Police confirm 7 killed and 681 arrested. How Nigeria got it wrong on governance. Tunde Adeniran says the consultations we run is terrible. That the constitution we run rather is terrible. That's an opinion right there on the page 11 of the Nigerian on the Sunday Tribune. All right, and the minutes of the paper, central bank governors in Africa knock high borrowing cost. Writer to the story may adopt common position at meetings with IMF and World Bank. Doctor, there are concern about some of the advices we receive from the IMF. Some person said, we should always be distancing ourselves. That the World Bank are not doing us good. We're seeing the fact that there are several borrowings by the federal government. Some of those we are still very indebted to them. And also, of course, some of the policies and advice given by IMF. Some persons are arguing that it's not helping the country to grow. Looking at the situations right there with the policies of the CBN, do you feel that there are more to think outside the box regarding some of the policy reforms and advices they receive from these international bodies?
Right. Thank you very much. I think, first and foremost, I think IMF and the World Bank are it's very common for them to require countries to want to make certain reforms and tighten their fiscal policies before they can be eligible for certain loans at a much reduced rate. I think those have been the driver of the President Tinubu's administration, because those loans come in at much cheaper than, say, Afrism, and we need a large influx of foreign loans at this moment to be able to support development. Now, the issue is, I think, not taking ownership of those reforms is the problem. The reforms, yes, they do come from IMF, they do come from World Bank, but how do you operationalize those reforms in a way that it actually works in the Nigerian setting? That is the most important thing. And I don't think we see more of the ownership. And I'll tell you what, when you look at even our constitution, a number of our regulatory provisions are just, we bring in experts and maybe they replicate. I will give you, for example, the Nigerian Gas Transportation Network Code, for example. That is a piece that was replicated using the guidance of the UK Gas Transportation Network Code, for the most part of about 70%. But the question is it just enough for you to copy things? Do you understand how to implement it in the Nigerian context? Those are the big questions to be asked. So it's not about guidance. The IMF should be guiding you, but you should understand the physical implications of your monetary policies and tell them, look, this is what I'm going to do at this time because I cannot do too much. There are going to be profound consequences because of how skewed our economy is in the first instance.
Because the reason I'm asking that question is because the policy of floating the currency, automatically had given increase to the dollar rise from over 500 to $1 to over 1,900 to $1 with that particular policy, which have accidentally dropped Nigeria from the largest economy now backward to the fourth largest in just a few months. Looking at that, two major policies to grapple with the subsidy value and the floating of naira. How do we balance this concern? I mean, the policy by the CBN, because it's also affecting the importation. When we know that we are still not producing, the concern of the production is low in the country. We are still having a high level of importation, and now the forex crisis is quite very heavy on many Nigerians. The effects.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the two policies should never have come together. It's a very sad one. And, I'm even concerned as an educated Nigerian because each time I look at the Renewed Hope agenda, I'm like, how much stewardship are we getting on this? And because the Renewed Hope agenda would have told us what will be done and what the potential benefits are. But I see what they're doing, but I don't see the benefits correlating to today's reality. And that's why I'm worried. And so my guidance to the CBN, my guidance to the government is, yes, there's nothing wrong in listening to the counsel of wisdom from the IMF and the World Bank. But please, when you're implementing it, do apply some caution and understand that the peculiarities of the Nigerian economy is really, really different from what you would have out there. Let no World Bank give you policies that you think is going to cause a very serious, economic upset. And then you bring it here and apply it, because Nigeria is just very peculiar in the way we run things, and we cannot unbundle things overnight. It will take time.
Well, thanks so much, Doctor. And now let's get, I think the last time I'm going to take on the Sunday Tribune newspaper. Future of medical provision healthcare services at risk. The MDCN president to react. That's it on the Sunday Tribune. And now to Sunday Vanguard. Sunday Vanguard newspaper this morning. Big story. I have heard you loud and clear. Tinubu tells protesters as protest enters day 4. Asks them to suspend further action to create room for dialogue. Says he understands Nigeria's pains and frustration. We must not let violence and destruction tear our nation apart. We are still having this story, Doctor, because it looks that Mr. President was probably pressured for these broadcasts. We saw the fact that since 1st of August, the protest started, the demonstration started in some major cities in the nation. The president was yet to respond. And now that he has responded, people are not probably still satisfied. He's saying that he has heard the protesters, and but some protesters, he has not in any way answered the demands, response, something tangible to owe it, for the fact that if they still go back to the markets today, the reality will still be down on them. How do you receive this message for the fact that the president has, yes, we are looking for the president, many people were calling on the president to address the nation, address the nation, address the nation. Now that the president has addressed the nation, do you feel that there's any tangible thing to put on the table? He's also calling for dialogue. But many Nigerians are saying that dialogue will not put to rest the issue of corruption. We cannot dialogue to stop corruption in the country. We cannot dialogue for the policy that you made. We cannot dialogue for so many issues that the president is calling for dialogue. And they are asking, what then is what's the possibility of, what is the dialogue bringing to the table in all of this? Because life is so hard. Hunger is still on the high side. Hardship is persistent in the country.
I mean, definitely, I can see some reasons for people to, be very cautious and have a cautious optimism on the prospects of Nigeria after this protest, and I see the worries. But the way I look at it is, Can anything change? Can we expedite things better? I see certain demands, but those demands are not things you can meet overnight. I'll give you context. If you say, for example, bring back fuel subsidy, you have gone ahead to pacify the World Bank and the IMF that because basically, the World Bank and the IMF are not really out to tell you exactly how to live your life. What they do is they tell you areas that they feel, look, we cannot give you a loan at a cheaper rate for you to fund an excessive lifestyle. And if that excessive lifestyle is paying a very huge amount of subsidy out, then they will tell you, look, I think you need to remove fuel subsidy because you cannot take our loan and spend it in the reckless way, in quotes. And that's where the conversation starts being, okay, how do we have a better grip of our fiscal responsibility from an economic standpoint? Now, I can see people really frustrated with the fact that they haven't gotten clarity. I think the lack of clarity is the problem. As I said, two questions hover. How are you going to address the economy? And when is the economy going to be addressed? And I dare to add a third one. When the economy is addressed, what would the addressed economy look like? And I can see that the people are divided. I think the devil is in the detail, and the president must know that, fine, this may have been a speech that is being, midwife to sort of put things under control. But away from that, the economic managers need to go straight to the drawing board and begin to look at these critical questions of how, when, and what is going to look like when things are fixed. Those are what the position they need to come out with to the Nigerians. And I think another fourth area that this we looked at, how bad are things going to get? Are we past the worst point yet? Because that's another fear. Nigerians want to know, are we going to get another dip and things go haywire? Or have we passed that worst point that we're only headed for much better? And all of these concerns, right, are justifiable. Why? You see the Naira keep dipping even when there are interventions in the FX market from the CBN. And that to me is a very, very good indication that we're running out of the potential of the interventions. The interventions have a limit to which they can work. It's like administering a certain drug and somebody is getting resistant to that drug, and you keep administering. After a while, it doesn't work anymore. That's what we're finding, that they're intervening, but the FX market is not moving. The FX market is not changing, meaning that it's reached its max potential. And the question is, if it's reached its max potential, what other thing are you going to do to drop the exchange rate? Those are critical questions that we need to ask ourselves. So I think just rolling out plans and aspirations is not enough. It's how you're going to do it, when it is going to happen from your forecast, and what is the worst case scenario that we're going to encounter, and when it happens, what is the economy going to look like when it gets better?
All right, Doctor. Very last question before we now round it up right on the session. Over 590 billion, the president said he has given out to state governors, and we are still having a concern about, it seems the governors are leaving the job alone to the president. What's the concern about these several palliative allocation, even the fertilizers, the grains to farmers? Some of these distributions, as past the president said, have been circulated to the different states. But we are not seeing this thing materialized in the many states. We are not seeing this thing materialized in local government. Lives have not been touched. We've not seen some level of relief by the people, which is still having an effect on the pressure on the federal government, especially Mr. President's table.
Oh, thank you very much. I think, I always said something that if we're going to solve Nigeria's problem, it's going to be a collaboration between all levels of government, basically, whether federal, the state, and the local. Thankfully, I have to say, in Akwa Ibom State, where we had, in fact, little or no, but I would love to say there was no protest. It was just people talking about the hardship. The governor has done quite a lot, and I'll use that as a stellar example. When we come to, kind of making sure that the palliatives trickle down to the lowest in the society economically, he has done that. In fact, he's doubled the palliatives for everyone given by the government, federal government. He's doubled it, and also made sure that there are other initiatives that are meant to cushion the realities of the economy. So I think the governors owe it as a point of responsibility to know that at times where the hardship is hitting, we need to put on our humanitarian cap and ask ourselves, that could be us. We're just opportune to be in the elite group for the most part. And life could swing anything at you. So I think it's a call of responsibility. I had to enumerate what Akwa Ibom State did differently, and which was even reflected in the fact that absolutely there was no protest there, just few people chanting about the hardship, but nothing in the magnitude of protests that we see in other states. And that's to show you that some governors are responsible, but some need a little bit of more I like to see that they need more effort in that regard. But definitely the solution to Nigeria's problem has to be pushed out from all tiers of the government, from the federal to the state and to the local government, before we can have a real effect as we would like to see.
A very big thank you to Dr. Wisdom Enang, Senior Energy Analyst and Consultant. Thanks so much for connecting with us and giving us a very strong insight to the paper reviews this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Deeply appreciate it.
And that's the package on paper reviews. And of course, these are the strong and very prevailing issues on the headlines of papers this morning. You can only get the papers from the vendors to get deeper knowledge and details on what the paper is saying this morning. But by 12, the midday news will be here, bringing to speed so many other issues and concern in the nation. My name is Edikan Michael, and that's the sides of a global morning, where we, of course, highlighted earlier that started with the broadcast of the president trying to review some of the points the president made, the appeals and the concern of the president that is on top of the game. He acts for the job, and of course, he's going to deliver the job. And for the protesters to suspend the demonstration because this is already triggering a lot of social devices where we've seen the killings, looting, and cases of theft in some states, and of course here in the Federal Capital Territory. But in a way, we'll see what the protesters, organizers will be out, their responses and the feedbacks, and we're still keeping our eyes on the streets to know if the demonstrations will persist even after the president's warning on his broadcast today. And that's the package we're going to be having right here on the Global Morning. My name is Edikan Michael. Thanks so much for staying and watching. Keep staying and watching Global Television.